All right, let's get right into it. Today we're tackling something that sounds kind of weird on the surface, but for so many people, it's a daily reality. We're talking about the psychological consequences of having a bullshit job. I mean, come on, you've thought about it, right? Getting a huge paycheck for doing basically nothing. It sounds like the absolute dream, the perfect gig. But what if that fantasy is really a total psychological nightmare? That's the crazy paradox we're going to unpack right now, and it's all based on some really solid research into what work does to our heads. So first things first, let's make sure we're all talking about the same thing. This term was actually coined by the anthropologist David Graeber. A bullshit job isn't just a job you hate. No, it's one that's so pointless, so unnecessary that even you, the person getting paid to do it, can't figure out why it exists. And this is where it gets really weird. It's what we're calling the paid for misery paradox. Now look, the core of this whole problem isn't people being lazy or ungrateful for a good paycheck. Not at all. The real issue, and the science backs this up, is that it goes against a deep, basic human need. The need for purpose. You know, we're just wired to want to make a difference, to see our actions actually do something. And when that's taken away, it feels like something inside of us just kind of cracks. Okay, so what does that actually feel like? Let's talk about the psychological toll, the real symptoms of a pointless job. The feelings people report are seriously consistent, and they're pretty grim. You've got depression and anxiety, of course, but also this constant feeling of being a fraud, not because you can't do the job, but because the job itself feels like a lie. Then there's the guilt over getting paid for nothing, and this really specific kind of exhaustion. It's not from working too hard, it's from the sheer mental drain of pretending to work.
Right. So everyone and their mother has heard of burnout. We talk about it constantly. But have you ever heard of its evil twin, bore-out?
It's a perfect way to think about it. Burnout? That's the exhausting from being overworked, from having way too much to do. But bore-out? That's the exhaustion from understimulation, from having absolutely nothing meaningful to do. It's the stress of pointlessness, and man, it is just as real. And just to be clear, we're not talking about just having a few bad days at the office. The researchers who dig into this stuff use some incredibly strong language. They call it a form of profound psychological violence. Think about that. It's like an assault on our fundamental need to matter. And that kind of violence, well, it does more than just cause stress. It creates a much deeper wound. It's about losing your sense of self. So how does this happen? Well, first, you lose your sense of agency, right? Because nothing you do actually changes anything. Then, your skills, your creative, problem-solving muscles, they just start to wither away. Pretty soon, you dread that classic question at a party. So, what do you do? And you just feel totally disconnected, like you're a spare part for a machine that isn't even turned on. This table just lays it all out so perfectly. Look at the difference. With meaningful work, your mental energy is spent actually solving problems. In a bullshit job, it's all spent on performative busyness, looking busy for the sake of looking busy. One path leads to growth and skill, the other, just cynicism. Okay, so this all sounds absolutely awful, which leads to the big question. If it's really this bad, why on earth don't people just quit? I mean, why would anyone stay in a job like that? And the answer, for so many, is something called the golden cage. Because here's the kicker, these pointless jobs are often really well paid. They come with fancy titles, great benefits, all the things that look good on paper. That security and status, it's a trap. And it creates this extra layer of misery because you feel guilty for being unhappy when you're supposed to have it all figured out. And look, I really want to stress this point. This isn't just people complaining or feeling a little down. This stuff is measurable, it's real, and we have the data to prove it. Check this out. A huge study used the World Health Organization's own index to measure well-being. People who felt their work was useful scored on average a 64.5 out of 100. Pretty good. But the people who felt their jobs were useless, they dropped all the way down to 49.3. That is a massive gap. It's a huge quantifiable hit to a person's quality of life. So what's the big takeaway here? What does all of this tell us about what we really need? Well, it turns out, as humans, we can actually handle a lot. We can put up with some serious difficulty. We can handle long hours. We can handle crazy deadlines. We can even handle a whole lot of stress. On one condition, that we believe it's all for something. And that brings us to the absolute core of it all.
The big psychological truth here is that the absence of meaning is so much heavier, so much more crushing than the presence of difficulty. A pointless existence is a weight that we are just not built to carry. So it really leaves you with one last question to think about. The paycheck might be great, the hours might be a breeze, but what's the true price of a pointless job?